Shush! Are you hearing this creepy voice? This was the reaction of people when they heard the scream from the Egyptian tomb. But from where did it come and how? If are you also wondering through these questions, then here is the answer. We are going to find out from where this screaming voice came. So keep on watching till the end to know the mystery behind the voice. Let's begin. Everyone loves a good mummy story, but one of the most interesting ones has nothing to do with King Tutankhamun or Juanita. Unknown man E was found at the ancient Egyptian site of Deir el-Bahari. He is one of the most well-known mummies in history, but this mummy, one of the scariest ever found, is better known as the screaming mummy around the world. This strange mummy has a head that is thrown back and a jaw that is open in what looks like a scream. But what happened to Egypt's screaming mummy, and why is he screaming? Archaeologists looked at the mummy and how he was wrapped and thought he might have been a prince named Pentuer who had messed up. In this ancient plot, a minor queen tried to put her son Pentuer on the throne by getting rid of his father, Rameses III. The plan was eventually found out, and Pentuer was forced to kill himself. But what happened to him after that? Maybe his body was found when archaeologists found the screaming mummy. Scientists were worried about the screaming mummy because it was very different from other mummies they had found in Egypt. One big difference was that instead of linen, he was wrapped in sheepskin, which the Egyptians, who were very concerned with cleanliness, thought was dirty. Only criminals or people who were doomed to hell forever would have been buried this way. Also, his coffin didn't have a name on it, so no one could say his name after he died, which was a big deal. His hands and feet were tied, making it look like he had died as a prisoner. He wasn't even properly mummified, which takes a long time. Instead, natron was used to dry him out and resin was put in his mouth. He might have been a prince who was put to death for being part of the harem conspiracy. Researchers think they may have found unknown man Prince Pentuer was the son of Pharaoh rid of his father and take over the throne. One of Rameses's minor wives in his harem wanted her husband to step down from the throne. She wanted to get rid, which is interesting. Man E and Rameses III were probably father and son, Prince Pentuer and his mother. So we now know the names of the main people involved in the plot. One of the people who made people angry at the pharaoh was Pibekamen, who used to be chief of the chamber. Pibekamen plotted with his former servant Ssshhh, his former head of the royal harem, Pinok, and his former scribe, Pendua. The plot reached all the way to the very top. Pies, the former head of the army, Onani, the head of the police, Hori, the head of the infantry bearers, and others were among the most powerful people who were in on the plot. It turns out that the people who planned the plot didn't fail completely. When the mummy of Rameses III was looked at, there was a cut on his throat that was 7 centimeters wide and went all the way to the bone. Prince Pentuer killed himself after a court found him guilty. The Turin judicial papyrus also tells what happened to the man who wanted to be Pharaoh Pentuer. When he was caught working with his mother, he was brought before the butlers to be examined. They found him guilty. They left him where he was, and he killed himself. But what does that mean? How did unknown man actually die? Maybe with poison. Gaston Maspero, who was in charge of the Egyptian Antiquities Service in 1886, made a guess. People who actually saw him thought he looked like he had been poisoned. The tightening of the stomach and abdomen, the desperate way the head is thrown back, and the look of terrible pain on the face make it hard to think of any other explanation. A chemist who looked at the body said the man might have been buried alive or hung, which would rule out the idea that Pentuer killed himself. The scream was only made because the head fell back after death. At first glance, it might seem like the screaming mummy screams were caused by terrible pain. In all likelihood, it happened pretty naturally. It turned out that after he died, his head fell back. His jaw fell open after he died, so he will always be screaming. The mummy was found in a number of royal coffins. The screaming mummy and a group of other royal coffins were found at the same time. The people lived in Deir el-Bahari, which was close to the Valley of the Kings. Many of the other mummies had names on them, but unknown man E did not. However, the fact that he was buried with royal mummies shows that he was of royal blood. All over the world, people have found mummies that are yelling, think he was a prince of the Hittites. There is no way to be sure for sure that unknown man E is Pentuer. But who could he have been if he wasn't an Egyptian prince? Some people think that the mummy was once a Hittite prince who was going to Egypt to marry the widow of King Tut. The prince died in mysterious circumstances, and scholars don't know where he is. But experts have disproved this theory because a man who mysteriously vanished wouldn't be mummified. Another idea is that he was a very important Egyptian who died outside of Egypt and was only partially mummified because the people around him didn't have the right tools. He was found in 1886 by a well-known archaeologist. Egyptologist Gaston Maspero found Unknown Man E in a royal tomb. However, Unknown Man E didn't become a tourist attraction until more recently. The possible grimness of his death and the look on his face make people interested in a morbid way. Scholars have been trying to figure out how he died for years, but the figure got national attention when it was put on display in a museum. He was one of the few mummies who were left alone during the Egyptian Revolution in 2011. When the Egyptian Revolution happened in 2011, it shook the northeastern African country and put a lot of its cultural history in danger. Several things were lost at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. In particular, Dr. Zahi Hawass said that a lot of valuable artifacts went missing and that 2 mummies were broken. But the screaming mummy was left alone by the thieves. Over 20,000 people went to the Egyptian Museum to see the screaming mummy. When it was first shown at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, the screaming mummy was a big hit. The museum director said that over 20,000 people came to see the mummy, which had been left in the basement. These guests were both Egyptians and people from other countries. The event was also written about in international newspapers, which brought people from all over the world to see it. So here we are done with the video. Let us know in the comment box, people, what you all think about it. Like the video and share it with your friends. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to watch more interesting videos like this. Thanks for watching.